Sauron has yet to reveal his deadliest servant, the one who will lead Mordor's armies in war.
He was the most feared of the nine, a shadow in black robes, a shriek that froze blood, and a servant whose name was long forgotten, if he ever had one at all. But how did the Witch King of Angmar become Sauron's greatest weapon? Let's look at this today.
Build me an army worthy of Mordor.
Before we get into things, I want to quickly mention something that I haven't done in quite a while. I mean, we have over 271,000 subscribers here on the channel, which is incredible, and thank you to you all. But actually, only about 35% of you watching are actually subscribed to the channel. So hitting that subscribe button, hitting the like button on the video does massively help us out with that YouTube algorithm, and honestly we'd be so thankful if you could help us out in any way possible. So if you think we deserve it, I would really appreciate it, keeping us strong and keeping us going. But with that, let's get on with the video. He was known only by his title, the Witch King of Angmar. No name, no face, no past. Just a crown above an empty hood and a scream that chilled even the bravest warriors. But where did this terrifying servant of Sauron come from? And how did he rise to become the Lord of the Nazgûl, Sauron's most feared enforcer? Tolkien never told us his name, and he never revealed his origin explicitly. But there are clues scattered across The Lord of the Rings, The Silmarillion, and the Unfinished Tales that allow us to piece together his journey from that powerful mortal king to a wraith bound by dark sorcery, to the commander of armies, bearer of dread, and the figurehead of evil that ruled from Angmar. This is not just a story of the Nazgûl, it's the story of how one man fell so far and why Sauron made him the ultimate servant. Long before he was the Witch King, he was a mortal man, and not just any man. Tolkien tells us the Nazgûl were kings, sorcerers, and warriors of old. Among them, the Witch King stood out as the most powerful and feared. Though Tolkien never gives his name or confirms his origin, most scholars and fans agree on one thing: he was almost certainly a Númenórean. This theory makes sense. The Rings of Power were given to men during the Second Age, and only a few realms had kings mighty enough to tempt Sauron. Realms like Númenor and its offshoots in Middle-earth. After Númenor's downfall, the Black Númenóreans, corrupted by Sauron, settled in places like Umbar and the south. Many of them sought power, and some were already dabbling in dark sorcery. One of these men, perhaps even a king among them, accepted a ring of power from Sauron himself. And that? Well, that was the beginning of the end. I mean, just imagine this. He held the ring in his palm. Gold, flawless, unassuming. The whispers were already there, curling like smoke through the edges of his thoughts. When he slipped it onto his finger for the first time, the world didn't vanish. It dimmed. The colours bled out. The voices of his court grew distant, echoing as if down a vast well. Then came the chill, not of winter, but of a power too ancient, too cruel to comprehend. A presence filled his mind, not with words, but with will. His will, and he knew he would never again be alone in his own thoughts. Now that's just a few thoughts of how I feel it would have gone when he first put on the ring, but I'd love to know how you all think that moment would have gone as well. But from here, the 9 rings were not like the 3 or the 7. They granted immense power, but at a terrible cost. They extended life, yes, but unnaturally. Slowly, they consumed the bearers. Their wills were eroded, their bodies faded, and eventually they became invisible, undying, and enslaved. Over time, the man who would become the Witch King began to vanish from the mortal world. His identity was erased, his ambitions were twisted. He no longer ruled for himself, but for Sauron. His soul was bound to the Dark Lord, and his transformation into a ringwraith, a Nazgûl, it was complete. By the time the Third Age dawned, he was no longer a man at all. He was a shadow, a whisper of death, the first among the 9. By the mid-Third Age, the Witch King was no longer just Sauron's wraith. he was his general, his weapon, his instrument of slow, calculated destruction. Roughly around the year 1300 of the Third Age, a dark power rose in the north of Middle-earth. A realm known as Angmar appeared beyond the Etenmoors, in the cold, harsh lands near the Misty Mountains. Its lord was unknown, cloaked in mystery, but his presence soon sent shivers through the free peoples. That lord was the Witch King. Tolkien writes that he came north and gathered evil men, and there he ruled from the fortress of Carn Dûm, which became the seat of his power. This was no aimless banditry. His campaign was slow, deliberate, and terrifyingly effective. The target? That would be Arnor, the once great kingdom of the Dunedain in the north, descendants of Númenor and, crucially, potential rivals to Sauron's dominion. But by then, Arnor had fractured. 3 petty kingdoms, Arthedain, Cardolan, and Rhudaur, squabbled over succession and territory. The Witch King saw his opportunity and moved swiftly. He stirred up old grievances, manipulated politics, and turned the divisions into war. In Rhudaur, he found fertile ground. Its Dunedain population was weak, and evil hillmen ruled the land. The Witch King supported them, effectively placing one of the 3 kingdoms under his control. From there, the Wars of Angmar began, and they lasted for centuries. He waged war not with overwhelming force, but with dread and attrition. Kingdom by kingdom, fortress by fortress, Arnor was broken. Cardolan fell to plague and shadow. Rhudaur was already his. And Arthedain, the last stronghold of the northern Dunedain, fought a bitter losing battle. It wasn't just warfare, it was domination through fear, sabotage, and sorcery. Tolkien is clear, the Witch King was not just a blunt instrument. He was cunning, strategic, and he nearly wiped out the line of Isildur. Had he succeeded, the heir of Elendil, and therefore Aragorn, would never have been born. And well, that would have made things very different later on. That's how close the Witch King came to extinguishing the hope of the West. The Witch King's reign in Angmar was devastating, but not eternal. By 1974 of the Third Age, he struck his final blow against Arthedain, capturing Fornost, the ancient capital of the North Kingdom. It seemed like the end of the Dunedain in the north, but just a year later, a counterstrike came. The forces of Gondor, Lindon, and the surviving Dunedain united under Prince Eomer, crossed the seas and met the Witch King at the Battle of Fornost. This time, he was defeated, but not destroyed. The Witch King fled into the shadows, vanishing for decades. Tolkien never tells us exactly where he went, only that he passed into the shadows, and no man's thought could trace him. It was during this time that he likely returned to Sauron, whose spirit was rising once again in the dark land of Mordor. But by the end of the 3rd millennium of the Third Age, the 9, including the Witch King, returned with power. They launched a surprise assault on Minas Ithil, the moonlit twin of Gondor's Minas Anor. After a brutal siege, they captured it, turning the fair city into Minas Morgul, the Tower of Black Sorcery. There, deep within the Morgul Vale, the Witch King established a new throne of terror. It was no longer just about armies. From Minas Morgul, he ruled as the captain of Sauron's Nazgûl, commanding dread, wielding the power of sorcery, and overseeing countless dark deeds in the east. This is the moment when the Witch King truly became Sauron's ultimate servant. Not just a corrupted king, not just a powerful wraith, but the chief executor of his will. He was entrusted with missions that required cunning, cruelty, and the ability to inspire absolute fear. He led the hunt for the ring, rode at the front of Sauron's armies, and cast spells of dread that crippled the resolve of men and elves alike. Minas Morgul became a beacon of Sauron's power, and the Witch King, well, the Witch King was its flame. For all his power, the Witch King's doom was always written in the same darkness that made him strong. As the War of the Ring began, he led Sauron's deadliest missions, corrupting kings, searching for the ring, and leading the siege of Gondor itself. But let's pause here just for a moment, because there is something poetic about the Witch King's rise, and then his fall. He began as a great king of men, likely one of Númenórean descent, gifted a ring that promised power but delivered slavery. Over centuries, he became Sauron's mightiest weapon, feared, dreaded, commanding armies that tore kingdoms apart. And yet, his end would not come at the hands of a king or great warrior, but by two figures he would have almost always dismissed. Éowyn, a woman of Rohan who dared stand in the face of evil, and Meriadoc Brandybuck, a humble hobbit with a blade from ancient Arnor. At the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, the Witch King confronted King Theoden, struck him down, and turned to face Éowyn, who stood her ground in disguise. When he boasted that no man could kill him, her reply shattered prophecy and fear alike. But no living man am I. Her strike, combined with Merry's enchanted blade, forged in the wars against Angmar, pierced the Wraith's magic. His form collapsed, his shriek faded, and just like that, the terror of thousands of years ended in silence. Tolkien never named him, never gave his former kingdom, perhaps because by the end, he had no name left, only a title, only a shadow of what he once was. The Witch King died not just because of a sword or a prophecy, but because evil, no matter how long it thrives, always carries the seed of its own undoing. And so, there we have it. In the end, the Witch King was more than a villain. He was the mirror of what Sauron offered to men. Immortality, domination, fear, and the loss of everything else. He destroyed kingdoms, wielded sorcery, led armies, and nearly broke the world's last great city. He was the ring wraith who ruled, the sorcerer who cursed, the general who conquered. But more than anything, he was proof of how even the greatest men could fall, and how serving darkness, no matter the reward, always leads to ruin. And that is why he was Sauron's ultimate servant. But now it's your turn. What do you think the Witch King was like as a mortal man? Let me know your thoughts and theories on this in the comment section down below. And along with this, if you would like to support the channel in other ways, please consider our Patreon. You can't always rely on YouTube itself, so this extra support will really help the channel stay strong and keep us getting that content out for you. But with that, thank you for spending just some of your time with me today, and I will see you next time on The Broken Sword.